Okay. How about now? Can you hear me? Okay. How about now? Can you hear me? I can hear me.
Who are you?
All right.
Welcome.
Okay.
Safe with me. I'll be right here, nice and close so I can speak without alerting the others.
Interesting. So this is about to be kind of meta. You're safe with me. So this is kind of tied in with, like, you guys know that I'm an admin over on Driven Industries, Eric Zink's Discord. One of the many topics that come up often, it's not even mental health. It is mental health related, and I'll get into that in a minute. It's relationships. And as a self-proclaimed expert of 2 divorces and several relationships, I'm going to go ahead and say that your mental health is more important than saving a relationship that is drowning. So, we're going to start with that. A lot of people think that the world is ending when a relationship ends, and it hurts. Like, there's a reason they call it heartache. It is physically painful. It's like all that dread and everything just like locks itself into your heart. And I know I'm talking over like when she's doing this cut screen. And it's important for me to talk now because otherwise I'm going to get involved in the game.
That's not quite true. Some are old.
Wraith, I love you.
Changed. I think
the thing is,
just like it changed her.
The end of a relationship is hard because it is change. Can you hear me now, Llewellyn? This is going to be just as frustrating as on my Mac, isn't it? So, all right. Well, hopefully you can hear me because I'm seeing everything's, move on my screen.
It is real after all.
So,
She's finally arrived in the land of mist and fog.
The thing that really is, it's important to remember is that losing yourself in a relationship is when it starts to go bad. And it doesn't matter if it's it's any kind of relationship, whether it's romantic, friendship, work, or like activities, whatever. If you lose yourself in that relationship, then it's not a healthy relationship. Your phone froze. You're getting in your truck. Okay, as long as I'm not being lost. That's why even after 2 divorces, the best advice that I can give to anyone who's having relationship problems is your relationship is not going to work if you're not willing to work on yourself. And it's also not going to work if your partner's not willing to work on themselves. So the best thing to do is to work on yourself when you're single, when you're alone. And that's a big reason why I refuse to date right now. I'm not in a place where I'd be a good partner. I am not in a place where I would be able to be a productive partner. And it would be selfish of me to get into a relationship with somebody with expectations that they care for me when I'm unable to do the same for them. At the same time, it would be absolutely ridiculous of me to get into a relationship with somebody who needed work. Because this thing where we get into relationships, this is especially true for women, this thing where we get into relationships to fix a guy, we need to stop doing that. Because if you're an adult and you get into a relationship to fix a guy, what you're doing is taking on the responsibility of raising a child who should have been raised already. And this goes for any gender. I don't care if you're male, female, non-binary, whatever. If your partner wasn't raised to respect others, care for others, they need to go on their own journey of self-awareness and growth. Because what I'm realizing now is that we're trained, not really trained. How do I put this? We are convinced that and again, this isn't a gendered issue. This is literally all genders. If you go into a relationship thinking, I'll save them, you're just as much at fault as they are, because you can't. And let's say, for instance, you even have a degree in psychology or a degree in psychiatry, any of that. It's unethical for you to treat your partner. It's unethical for so many reasons. Because one, you're probably wrong. You're too close to the situation, for two. And for three, like, how condescending is it to feel like your partner is your patient? Like, there's a whole different dynamic. So that's why, like, you don't diagnose people. Don't, especially not the people close to you, because you're 100% wrong. And Llewellyn, it really, stopping is the hard part when it's all you know. It really is. And like in your case, there's a complication when kids are involved. And like, I don't know that there's like a real easy answer. There really is, like, when it comes to, kids being involved, there's no easy answer. There really isn't. But and we can get to that in a bit. I did lay out an outline because it's 9 a.m. and we've been going through sleep issues in my house. But we talk about getting out of abusive relationships. It's so hard to get out of abusive relationships when we have, I hate to do the mean, but we live in a society where, we have all of these weird hang-ups about relationships. Like, 90% of jokes in comedy are like about how dumb our partners are. And like, I know it's super sensitive and whatever, but like, if you feel like your partner is dumb, why are you with them? You know, it's, I mean, it's not a complicated question. Like, if you're willing to create a 30-minute stand-up routine based around how dumb your partner is, do they have other value to you? You know, I mean, and imagine like being that person where a 30-minute stand-up routine is about you and how dumb you are. And this isn't like pointed at any one comedian or whatever. I've seen it several times. Big names, little names, you know, TV shows, movies. We have this trope where our partners suck. Okay, so why are we with them? Because there has to be this like place where we break and say, hey, this is kind of a gruesome game for 9:30 in the morning, but sorry. But back to what I was saying.
Oh, she heard us.
Sorry, I got distracted for a second.
No going back.
Self-growth is so important. See, and here's the thing. With both of my relationships, with my first marriage, it was a bad idea. Like, I should have just been like, all right, I'm a single mom. I chose to go back to my oldest son's father because I wanted to create a family. I wanted what my parents had. And my parents have a relationship based on, it's a weird dynamic, but I've never heard either parent like openly disparage the other. It may have changed in the past few years, but you know, I've never heard them say, you know, openly make jokes about how dumb the other one are. Or, yeah, I'm going to be keeping this up. So I wanted something like my parents had, and I figured I could make it happen. It was very clear early on that was not the case. I was working third shift in a factory. I was what they call an industrial seamstress. Oh, I'm supposed to move and do stuff. I was what they call an industrial seamstress. And okay, this is frustrating. This is gonna so what was I saying? I was working third shift as an industrial seamstress, and like my ex, this was after our son was born. Okay, there we go. So
they say the burning of a corpse will take you straight to Hell's Gate, but gods in the living will follow this one.
Interesting.
You must leave the islands of Orkney across the eastern sea and find
I need to figure something out. I'm getting distracted. So, with my first relationship, first marriage, I worked third shift, and I would come home, and rather than sleeping so he could take care of our son while I slept, absolutely, they should be about honesty, respect, forgiveness, and unconditional love. Like I figured he was going to sleep while I worked, and he didn't. He stayed up all night. Like, and this is even like pre-internet. This is like 2000. So
I'm stuck out here on this boat, and I don't know how to get to shore.
so rather than sleep, he was up literally playing Star Fox 64. And it was frustrating because, like, I needed to sleep during the day. You know, there's no other way to say it. And, you know, I needed to sleep, and I wasn't getting sleep. So I was actually working myself sick. I ended up going to a doctor to see, you know, why I was fatigued and all the time, and what I could do to feel better. And my doctor was just like, girl, you need sleep. And I didn't have insurance at the time, and I was paying like $80 a visit to be told that I needed sleep. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just wandering around right now.
There were 3 lost dinosaurs, and we rescued 2 of them. So how many dinosaurs still need our help? 1. And the last dinosaur left is Microraptor.
So I'm gonna go back to where I'm not in the water, because that's kind of making the game choppy. Oh, I could have just like stopped there. But like that should have been like my first real red flag, and that was before we got married. Wait, no, that was after we got married, because we had to get married in order for him to cross the border.
The school kids are here for their field trip. They're lining up outside to see the dinosaurs. The museum doors are about to open.
I'm
Don't worry, Mouse.
gonna sit here with her.
Microraptor and right away.
And it's frustrating because, like, you know,
Will help us find
I could have gotten, you know, a babysitter for my son while I worked, and it would have been so much less stressful. And not that we didn't have good times, because we did absolutely have good times. It's just that
building in Umi City.
the times that we had
Let's find the tallest building.
weren't
Which building?
good enough to justify
Yeah, that building is the tallest.
all that I went through. And between
Little Microraptor. Let's go, team.
not taking care of our son when he needed to be taken care of, and he, like, between that and when he was able to work finally, when we went back to Canada, he the only job that he could get that he was good at was a telemarketer. And I'm not bagging on all telemarketers. I'm sure some of them are great, but like when the only thing that you're good at is selling fake medication to elderly people, that was like, that should have set off so many red flags. But I stayed with him. I was trying to make it work. I wanted to make it work. I wanted to I wanted to be a wife and a mother, and not just a mother.
What goes here?
And I was in a rough place at the time as well. I was away from my family. I didn't have friends. I didn't have supports. But at the time, that was when, like, excuse me. That was when, like, online chats were, like, a new big thing. And I got really involved with, like, MSN communities and stuff like that. And then I got involved in the 3D community. And,
Red, green, purple.
overall,
What comes next?
I had some supports that I could go to and say, hey, this doesn't feel normal. Is this normal? And I'm lucky that I found, like, some good friends. We called ourselves the Fools. It was based off of a thread at daz3d.com called the Feels Out of Luck. You can't find it. It was
Pink, yellow,
long story. It's a story time in and of itself.
yellow. Pink, yellow, yellow.
But
What comes next?
for the longest time, for months and months and months on end,
Then what?
I had friends going, you need to leave. It's not good for you.
Friend?
There's physical abuse going on. There's emotional abuse going on. He's emptying your bank account for stupid video games. You need to get out. And I did need to get out. But I held on to that for some reason. I just held on to it and I was like, no, I'm not going to leave. I'm good.
It's time for the
I can handle this. My relationship is worth saving. And really it wasn't. It's one of those things where we just shouldn't have been together. And I look back and I think of all of the everything that I could have done differently. And to be 100% honest, there's not a whole lot that I could have done differently. And it wasn't my job to fix him. Any relationship you're in, it's not your job to fix your partner. And it's not your job to make, like, it's your job to make them feel loved. It's your job to make them feel wanted. It's not your job to heal the wounds of their childhood. It's not your job to heal the wounds of past relationships. If they can't do something to put their past behind them or grow from their past, what makes you think you can do it for them? You're not them. You're not in their head. You can't do the work for your partner. You have to do the work for you. They have to do the work for them. I mean, and with my last relationship, I can't really say it's ended in divorce because we're not divorced yet. Everything is making noise today. Dinosaurs. We had this relationship and we both went into it knowing fully well that we were both kind of screwed up.
We can do anything.
And, I was just like, I was damaged from previous relationships and previous expectations, and so was he, and we used that against each other. I'm not blameless in the situation whatsoever. What is this? Oh, keyboard light. I'm not blameless in the situation because, quite frankly, I did the same to him. I don't know how he felt about it because he never really shared how he was feeling. And that's, a frustration. Like, if you're not sharing how somebody makes you feel, and if you close off, the other person, the other person can't fix anything, and you can't grow as a couple. But, like, I knew, again, with my second marriage, I knew early on that it was not good for either of us. And, and it wasn't even the little things. It was like, I was missing gigantic red flags. We were renting a room out of a house from his ex-girlfriend. That's not normal. But I was just like, oh yeah, growth, whatever. That's so cool. I mean, listen. Some people can be cool about that. I'm just saying that he wasn't. Because clearly, even though he had moved on, anytime she tried to move on, it would just devastate him. And it's just like, really? But this is so loud. Sorry. Timu Mizumi all the way. But no, and then we went from there to, like, she literally just kicked us out. And, as much as I respect her as a person, human being, when you're renting a room to somebody for $800 a month, and it's not even like an apartment, it was literally a bedroom. So, anyway, so we went from there, literally overnight, to his parents' basement, which should have been another red flag. When he was too worried about his credit, which, to be honest, should have been fine. Because he'd never done anything with his credit other than get a car, and he was making car payments on time. Well, we moved into his parents' basement, and we kind of, like, we would never have left if we weren't legally obligated to. And I kept making excuses like, oh, we're just saving for getting a better apartment. And we really weren't. He wasn't even paying the car payment. We ended up losing the car. And I kept making excuses. And I kept making excuses why this activity was normal and why everything was fine. That was a random tear. And the thing is, you can't make excuses and be in a healthy, happy place. So I was really not in a good place for a really long time. I kept making excuses. Having a baby is hard on him. It's something new. He wanted a baby, but he didn't realize how much work it was. I get it. So I was making those excuses. When in reality, like, when I was 17, I was never going to be a mom. Ever, 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 ever. I didn't want kids. I, actively did not want children. And then at 19, I got pregnant. And I knew that it was, do or die time. I was a mom. I didn't have a choice in the matter. I was a mom. Buck up and, do what I can. And I did. I made sure that we had shelter. And at the point where I knew I was going to lose mine, I made sure he had shelter. Because as a parent, you sacrifice, even if you know that it's going to detriment your child in some way. You make sacrifices to make sure it's the least bad. So all throughout the relationship, and this is something that I've worked through with my therapist, so if you're seeing this, go get a therapist. And I don't mean talking to your clergy. It's fine to talk to your pastor about things that you're worried about. But if you need intense therapy, do your pastor a favor and get a therapist. And I'm not saying that they're not qualified, because a lot of the pastors that I've known actually have degrees in they double majored in like divinity and psychology sort of thing. But do your pastor a favor and get a therapist, because he's not, as much as he is there for your community, he's not a free therapist. Go get a therapist. But like I go back and forth of all the times that I should have left. And I realized that the problem wasn't that I was fed up, or I wasn't fed up enough, because I was 100% like full. I was like overflowing with fed up enough. The problem is I was afraid of change. Change is hard. Like, when you're an adult, you find things you like. Whether it's the peanut butter that you like, the brand of macaroni and cheese, the brand of canned tomatoes that you use in your chili, your 10 packs of underwear. And when they're discontinued, it's hard to wrap your head around the change. But it's change that's being made for you. You don't have a say in it. And you can either forever be mad at the company that made the change, or figure out if the change works for you, and if not, find something else. The same is true for relationships. And while I'm not Christian, I grew up Christian. And one thing that I noticed now as an adult is that even if I were a Christian and I wanted to preach to fellow Christian women, one thing that I would tell every woman that I met is that it is a wonderful thing to want to grow your family. It is not serving God. It is not serving you. It is not serving the church to grow a family in a toxic environment. And I don't have the passages on me right now, but there are several passages where there was the condemnation of the abuse of your family. And I think that needs to be brought to the forefront a lot more. But again, I am not a Christian, so I can't really speak on that with authority. I can only do it like anecdotally. But what I will say is that the Christian doctrine does inform our society in a great way, and sometimes it does damage to the point where we have women staying in relationships, and men actually. People of all genders staying in relationships where they are being abused. It's a toxic environment. The children are being abused. They are given no way out. And our support structures it's supposed to be like our family, our friends are our support structures. And if our support structures are gone when we need them, like when we're in a relationship that we need to get out of, that's not serving us either. That's not doing anything good for humanity in general. I'm getting into complicated territory here. But I will say we as a society need to lighten up on the whole idea of failed relationships, because it does take two people to fail a relationship. And there are some places where somebody is completely in the wrong. And then there are some times when, both parties have to realize that they both sucked at being in a relationship. I at times have sucked at being in a relationship. And I'm still in a place where I will suck at being in a relationship. My kids come first. Excuse me. And I'm in a place where I'm doing better for myself. I'm growing myself. I'm making my life better. And if you're not adding to it, then you're subtracting from it. And I'm not in a position where I can handle anyone subtracting from my life. Excuse me. So that is the position that I'm coming from. If a friend reaches out and says, "Hey, I'm having this problem with my partner, my boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever," I look at it from my perspective, because everyone does, to be quite honest. I'm not a relationship therapist. I'm not a relationship counselor, but I look at it this way. If you're coming to me like distressed about your partner leaving socks on the floor next to the hamper, I know that there's something deeper going on, because it's just socks next to the hamper. If it's repeated socks next to the hamper, it kind of leads to like this idea that there's disrespect going on. Because while socks next to the hamper are not a big issue, if you've been asked repeatedly to stop putting socks on the floor next to the hamper and just put them in the damn hamper, there is a huge lack of respect going on. And that's something that you need to address. And I, as somebody not in your relationship, can't address that for you. And if you're unwilling, if you come to me and say, "I don't know what to tell him," then I'm going to tell you to leave. I mean, point blank. If the socks are this big of a deal to you, then your relationship isn't built on honesty, respect, trust. None of it. And, it goes back to your comment, Llewellyn. Be honest. The socks on the floor piss me off. Respect your partner enough to tell them that they piss you off and what they need to do to rectify the situation. Forgive them when they fix the situation, and love them regardless. It's basically a really good formula about it. But at the same time, your partner has to take the effort. If you're repeatedly cleaning up after them and that's creating that much of a resentment factor, you need to have a talk. Things aren't, going great. There's a storm brewing in paradise. But you need to communicate. Now, and then I'm going to kind of put in a coda here, because this is not dealing with abusive relationships. If you are in an abusive relationship, if you have a way to get out, get out. There are shelters that will help you, and you don't have to be poor to get help in a shelter. Do you know how many people, like affluent women, go to battered women's shelters, domestic violence shelters? They will help you get on your feet. And that doesn't just mean financially. They will, first of all, give you a space to breathe. You're away from your abusive partner. They teach you life skills that you probably didn't have before. Some of which are, don't text him back. Don't text him. Stop stalking him on social media. They'll get you into therapy to help you engage those life skills. And that leads me to another thing. Everybody thinks that therapy is for people who are broken or, you know, ready to crack. Or if you're in therapy, that you're like one step away from being the next mall shooter. That is not the case. And I'm pretty sure that if those people had gone to therapy and it was effective, they wouldn't have been shooters. That's kind of a little bit of, you know, generalization. But people who are active in therapy and active in making their life better don't turn around and perform heinous crimes. So, my thing with this is, you know, the reason that you need therapy is because you're not valuing yourself. And you need somebody outside because you're not listening to your friends and family who are telling you that you are of great value. You're listening to your partner who's telling you that you're a piece of shit. You need therapy to deal with that, because when someone you love tells you that you're worthless, it is devastating. And it affects you for the rest of your life. It just does. There's no way to get around it. When somebody that you love tells you that you're worthless, or tells you that you can't do anything right, or any myriad of other things, it affects you. It affects every single thing you do. It affects your work. It affects your hobbies. It affects your self-worth. It affects the way you treat your children, if you have any. It affects the way you treat your family. It affects every aspect of who you are. And the problem is, we downplay it. Like, oh, he didn't mean it that way. You know what? He sure did say it that way. And if he didn't mean it that way, it's on him to fix it, not for you to forgive it. So, if you're in a situation where you need to get out, my DMs are open on all social media platforms. I'll have to figure that out later. If you look in one of my last videos or live streams, you'll see that, quite frankly, like all of my I've missed like so much chat. I'm sorry, you guys. Like, the last thing that I saw in chat was Llewellyn's little blurb on love. So I'm sorry that I'm missing everybody. If you don't want to reach out to me on any social media platform, 211.org, or dial 211. 211.org has a history eraser. They won't erase your entire history. It'll just erase the fact that you were there. Top right hand corner. Because they realize that not all the people that are in crisis that need their help are allowed to be there. They realize that some of the people that need help, if it's found out that they asked for help, bad things will happen. So, I am fine helping you find resources. I can't make you call the numbers. You have to call the numbers. I can't make you leave. I'm not anywhere near you, and I'm not physically capable of doing that anyway. I want everyone to be safe and happy. And it really frustrates me when I tell somebody, how do I put this? It's not really frustrating, it's just heartbreaking. There are two really good examples, and I want you to Google the first one. Her name is Tina Talbot. She is a woman a little bit older than me, whose son is a little older than my 9-year-old. They're both the same, not really the same. They're both nonverbal autistic children. She is now in prison for 15 years for killing her husband, who had spent the week beating her, raping her. And then when he told her that he was going to kill her and their son, she got up the courage to shoot him. And you know what? There's one less abusive asshole in the world. That's what I will say. She does not deserve to be in prison. Her son does not deserve to be without a mother. Especially a mother that sacrificed so much. That's one outcome of staying with an abusive partner. The other outcome, one of my best friends in high school was murdered while leaving. It was a murder-suicide. Leaving your abusive partner is the most dangerous act. And if you do it while they're there, your chances of dying are so great. If you have an opportunity to leave when they're not there, and get away and get help, take it. It will save your life. It will save your family from heartache. And it will give you a new beginning. And this TV show, movie plot thing where we sit and bicker with our abusive ex over and over and over and over and over, pushing them to the edge, that's unhealthy. And that is literally laying bait. But it's also you showing that you value yourself so little that you won't give yourself peace. And I'm here to tell you that the greatest peace that you can have when leaving your abusive ex is what, I don't know if it's just in, the trauma community or what, but it's a concept called gray rock. It's not completely blocking them. You don't block them on social media, your phone, whatever. You leave your lines of communication open, but you do not ever contact them. They contact you, you give them only the information they need, and end it. End the conversation. Period. I do not want to see anyone, men, women, non-binary people, anyone at all, ever go through that abuse. I didn't have it as bad as some people, and I know how hard it was for me to leave. It literally took this last time. What it took me to leave was realizing that I was being 100% taken advantage of. And maybe I will share that story someday. It's not going to be today because we're already at almost an hour. And I need to wake the boys up and get them some pancakes, because I promised them pancakes if they took their medicine last night. But I want to end on this. You have your worth and your value are not based on what you can do for other people. Your worth and your value are inherent. Doesn't matter who you are. It does not matter how able-bodied you are or able-minded you are. You are worth so much more than you are told. And it doesn't matter if you're the next, great inventor or amazing musician or whatever. Just be a good person. Love, share love. And just know that, again, your value is so much greater than you're being told. So, I'm going to go take my own advice. I'm going to relax my shoulders. I'm going to take some deep breaths. I'm going to do a little bit of meditation. Probably going to play some of this crazy looking game. And I'm going to make some pancakes. So, I hope you got something out of this. I love you guys. And, I'm not frozen. And I'm going to go ahead and get off here. And I'm going to wipe my face first because unexpected crying. But, yeah. I love you guys. I hope you have... I really, really, really hope that you have a good day. I'm sorry that you had to start it with a live stream of me crying. And if you need me, reach out. I know I'm not the most attentive on all of my messages, but I do try to get back to you as soon as I can. I'm trying to work on some sort of a balance. So, love you.